introduce, I can... Oh, good afternoon everyone, this is Alex with Anthelion Helicopters, and we're live now with Long Beach Local News. We've got Ryan in the back and Danny in the co-seat here, who's one of the new guys working for us. So we've got a combination of stuff that we're doing today. We're going to actually be doing some YouTube work as well as doing some news reporting at the same time. So as well as testing all the equipment that we've got on board. Ryan's been kitting it out for the last 2 hours, so we'll see if it all works properly. So any questions you have or any feedback, please let us know. Again, this is Alex with Anthelion Helicopters, and welcome to another YouTube video that we're doing. Today is actually going to be an interesting video because we're going to combine some of news reporting with it. So in terms of piloting, I'm going to talk about how we actually do piloting for the news, for the local news here in Long Beach, some of the techniques we do, as well as if I have to actually report as well. See, already we've got some interesting things we have to fiddle with here, where Danny's got to fiddle with the mount, because obviously helicopters vibrate a bit. And the mount wants to move around, so, you know, there's always technical, interesting things with what we're doing. But looking at the 405, as we can imagine, the 405 and the 710 intersection is pretty horrendous right now. It's pretty bad on the on-ramp coming on the 405. That's the 405 southbound from the 710 northbound. But it's a clear day. We were going to do this flight 2 days ago, and when it was just about to have that horrendous little rainstorm come in, and thank goodness we didn't, because it was grey and nasty and crappy, and today is absolutely clear blue 22, and it's a perfect day for flying up here. I can see as far as the horizon will take us right now, so I can see Catalina pretty clearly. I'm actually going to spend a bit of time today over by all these ships out here. One of the main focus of today's flight is actually going to be what's going on at the port. I'm sure everyone in Long Beach has noticed how there is actually a plethora of ships. It's like someone sneezed ships outside the breakwater right now.
That's your frequency change group.
I think there was 48 at one time, so hold on 1 second, I'm just going to go on the tower.
Hey Danny, can you just straighten that up just a little? Yeah. Is it the maintaining it with...
That time was a record year for the port, and then beginning of 2020, obviously it was everything ground to a halt. As soon as China stopped exporting, there was, you know, everything around here turned down. I think it was 17% in the first quarter of 2020, which for the port is a huge amount. And then during the rest of 2020, some kind of interesting stuff happened, really. Hold on 1 second. Harbour traffic, helicopter 744 Hotel Sierra, Gerald Desmond Bridge, southbound, 900 Harbour. At the beginning of 2020, the focus of people's consumer habits when they were stuck at home changed. Rather than going out and spending money on movie tickets and going out, people were actually just ordering things. And you know, Amazon obviously became one of the valuable companies for a while, and Jeff Bezos is now the richest guy in the world. And that was mainly due to the pandemic. So obviously the demand for goods went through the roof during the pandemic, and that put an enormous strain on the port with all of the goods starting to get imported. As you can see right now, we've got probably 30 ships out here. So on average before, ships used to come pretty much straight to their berth to offload all their cargo, and you know, it was a maximum of like maybe 2 days if it was really, really busy for the ships to get on berth. During the height of the pandemic, it was over a week ships were sitting out here on average on anchor right now because there's simply no room in both ports to actually offload the cargo. That was made doubly worse by the fact that a lot of the ship workers got coronavirus at the same time. What's going on down there? Oh, no, I thought there was people down there on that ship, but it's actually not. Went out for having coronavirus symptoms, so that's a pretty sizable amount of people that suddenly are not unloading containers. Coupled with, you know, massive demand at the same time. Hold on 1 second. The 4 Hotel Sierra, we just crossed the just to the east of Angels Gate. We've got your visual numbers going into the end of the year, and in other ways, obviously not such a good way when you've got so many of the staff out. And I know that the port was one of the first to really push for its staff to get inoculated, just because it needed to have them back on there. And really, there's just a shortage of skill and of getting a good shot. So we're maintaining about 700 feet at the moment around this guy, and about a quarter of a mile away. Zooms on the lenses, so we're going to come around the stern of the vessel right now, around the back, and we're still maintaining 800 feet, doing about 70 knots right now. just keeping an equidistant orbit. This is one of the things we teach our students to do when they're getting their basic licenses. That sunset, that sun coming down is actually pretty pretty on it, on the top of it. It's a big square blob in the middle of the ocean. And we just continue this round, and depending on what type of target you're doing and how quickly you want to go onto it, which we'll demonstrate in a second, then we can be more abrupt with our movements. But for this kind of shot when we're just looking at a ship itself, then we can be pretty chilled about it when we're going around. And we're just trying to get a nice panoramic shot. So we'll go over right now. I can see behind us, which I'll bring it around to now. We've got a ship. It looks like an auto carrier coming out here, but it's moving. So we'll actually go on to that target and have a look at that ship as well before we start heading back inland. But yeah, that's the skinny on the port, really. Obviously, record years in 2020. Probably we'll still see a big backlog until 2021 where they try and catch up with everything. Obviously, once the vaccine keeps rolling out, they'll get more workers back and be more effective again. And hopefully they'll be able to get things off the docks. But I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to see a lot of ships off the coastline here. And this is not just in Long Beach and LA, obviously it's exacerbated here because it's such a big port, but it's all across the world and all across the US. We're such a big net importer of goods from abroad. This is what happens. So here we are, we're going to come into another ship here. I'm going to do a little bit of a tighter orbit around this guy just so that, you know, we can get a better glimpse of it. Really ungainly ship, this thing. It just looks like a grey box, but it's a car carrier. And so what I had to do is actually fly with a tail rotor a lot. I'm not just using the cyclic in my right hand to turn, I'm using the tail rotor to pull the back end round to keep the camera on target the whole time round here. You get a little bit more aggressive with the controls. Again, the main aim is to always keep the target on what you're doing. Oregon Highway in Panama. I guess most stuff is registered to Panama around here for various regulatory reasons. Obviously with another invasion on its fleet. The fleet was moved here, over there, on Navy Way actually, between the two ports, and back then the submarine was a new invention, and the US Navy was very, very worried about potentially the Japanese coming and torpedoing what was left of the fleet, so they created the breakwater as a barrier, so that they created two effective choke points to make it really hard for the Japanese to sneak in here and torpedo the rest of the ships. But you know, obviously an attack never came, as we well know, right? The Japanese surrendered at the Battle of Midway on the sister ship to the Iowa over there in San Pedro. But then after that it went into a container port. This was all reclaimed land, it was all marshland, and then the fleet moved back down over there, which is called Pier 400 because it's 400 acres. Pier 300 is called Pier 300 because it's 300 acres. And here we are, just right over the top, in between the two, very close to what used to be called Sea Launch. And right now we're just going to go and cruise in to downtown. We'll do a couple of orbits to downtown and talk a bit about that before going in. I'm just going to make a quick call to the tower and get us... Long Beach Tower, I've got Central for Hotel Sierra is coming up on the Queen Mary, requesting to do a bit of work downtown for about 5 to 10 minutes before the South Rondo arrival, landing Rosswood Lima.
Only 744 Hotel Sierra, Long Beach Tower, report in down Redondo, approved, landing at Ross, will be at your risk.
Roger, reporting down on Redondo, landing at risk for Hotel Sierra, thanks. Alright, so that was my quick call to Long Beach Tower. We're just coming up here around about the Queen Mary, which obviously has been closed for a long time. Still holds the record for the most number of people ever carried on a ship. Just over, coming up to 17,000. It was used as a troop transport in the Second World War. Also as a mobile command platform for Winston Churchill and everyone else when they were fighting. And yeah, it was called the painted battleship Grey and called the Grey Lady back then. Got a reputation as a ghost ship mainly because it was too fast and it outran all of its escorts and then run some of them over as well. So unfortunately back then radar wasn't too hot and they couldn't really detect each other, and yeah, it was actually too fast. It outran all the U-boats and the submarine, the German submarines, so they could never get it as much as they wanted to. I'm just avoiding all the seagulls right here. And it came here in the 1960s and has been here ever since. Right next to it we've got the old Spruce Goose hangar there, which, you know, Howard Hughes built the Spruce Goose, which is still the biggest aircraft ever built with a 300-foot odd wingspan. But back in the 90s it was used as a movie studio as well. The original Batman movies, I believe, got filmed there. The one with Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton, Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito. The Gotham City was inside there as a movie set, so it was a pretty cool route here. Here we are over downtown Long Beach, and just cruising over Shoreline Village, we're over in the Pacific and everything else. Hopefully all this stuff will be starting to open up right now that we come back into the red tier now in Long Beach. We come off that purple restrictive tier and things are starting to open up, which means I can get my ass down the gym again, which has been too long. Probably lift about half as much as I could probably previously lift, but it'll still be more than Ryan in the back, you know, which is always good, because he can't lift that.
Here for traffic, start your right turn to left base for like 2
just coming over the lighthouse at Shoreline.
Right now for left base, 2 o'clock.
The lighthouse is a good one to demonstrate a different type of orbit, right? So with this one we're going to actually slow down a lot. We're at 700 feet right now. Our previous orbit was, you know, like about 70 knots. We're going to slow down super slow on this one.
13 Lima,
Get much more of a close in, slower orbit. But with this one you're a pilot, you've got to really understand your wind direction. You don't want to get into settling with power. But you also got to understand what the wind will do to you, because it will push you and make you drift. So you have to sort of elongate out different sides of your orbit here, otherwise, before you know it, you're either drifting away from your target or you're drifting over the top of it. Either way, you miss your target, which is absolutely no good for if you're shooting on it. Here we are, right over Shoreline Village up here, so if anyone's out there, which absolutely no one is, it's as quiet as a mouse down there. We just wave it out. And we can also, if I know the wind direction, we'll do what we could now, we'll bring it into what's called an outer ground take over. We got enough, we know the wind direction now, we got enough power on the day. And say Ryan wants to get a static shot or something, then I'm actually going to bring it up into a complete outer ground. Here we are, we're not actually really moving at all right now. But this is actually much harder to do. You can really understand your wind direction and different type of flying, but if you're really trying to get a static shot of it or something, this is the only way to do it. So right now, what I don't want to do is descend, because I was descending to my own downwash, which is really not any good. What I'm just really trying to do is stay over the same spot. Obviously the wind's going to push us around a little bit, but we're not doing too bad right now. We can sit here until we run out of gas pretty much when the wind changes direction. But it gives us the ability, this is what you see the news helicopters doing when they're trying to stay over the same bit right now. And here we go. Pretty cool, right? Now you just annoy everyone on the ground because we're all noisy, just literally sitting here in a hover. Alright. And off we go.